Five characters just sitting around a dinner table talking to each other. Doesn't sound very interesting, but pay attention and you'll start to see Anakin's path to the dark side, Padmé's solution to save her people, and Qui-Gon's curiosity about an ancient prophecy, all foreshadowed and revealed in this scene. It's one of my favorites in all of Episode 1, and so Nathan and I are going to start here. We're going to pick things up right where we left off in our journey through the Phantom Menace.
So, let's dig in, man. Unless you got any other thoughts before we dive in.
I had one thing. Oh, yeah, so that scene we talked about that you pointed out where Qui-Gon speaks and we couldn't tell what he was saying.
Yes.
We talked about that, I think, last time.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I'd never seen that before. It blew my mind. And I noticed in rewatching it that, I don't know if you caught this, but Padmé also speaks and you don't see what she says in that exact same shot.
Oh, no, I didn't.
So, and she said it's a little harder to see what Qui-Gon says in that shot, but
yeah,
Padmé clearly says something like, and this is R2-D2. And I went back to the illustrated screenplay, and that's the line that she has in there where it sets up, the scene goes, these are my friends, Mom, as Anakin says. And then he says, this is Padmé. And he says, oh, I don't think I know your guys' names. And so Qui-Gon introduces himself. He says, I'm Qui-Gon Jinn, and this is Jar Jar Binks. And then Padmé says, and this is R2-D2. And then that prompts Anakin to say, I'm building a droid. Do you want to see? And so originally his line there was in response to her pointing out R2-D2. And so then I think they probably just cut it for time. You know, that's one of those things where there's a lot of tiny little lines dropped here and there in scenes that are probably just cut so that they can make the movie shorter. They just it's just too long. And so they're trying to trim wherever they can. So I'm assuming that's what happened here because nothing too crazy is happening. They're just introducing themselves and that's kind of redundant, at least for the audience. So I think the way they have it trimmed now, Anakin just brings up, I am building a droid. And whereas before it was, oh, I'm building a droid too, because she is talking about R2-D2. And then that's how you get to the 3PO scene. So anyway, I just noticed that again, watching it, I saw like, wait, Padmé's talking too. What is she saying? But you can't see it. And you don't notice it because your eyes are drawn to Qui-Gon and then to Anakin, and you don't notice everything else. So clearly that scene, there's a split in that shot somewhere where Qui-Gon and Padmé's parts of that shot were kind of retimed to play at the same time instead of one talking after the other. There's a bunch of, if you look through it, there's a bunch of those little, if you look for them, there's these kind of digital manipulation of like timing and editing here that George was having fun with, where changing how the scenes worked and stuff like that. There's actually one at the end of this dinner, at the dinner table, the next scene, there's one you can see.
You'll have to point that out to me. But, I'm not sure where that is.
Yeah, well, when we get there, I'll, I guess because you have the movie pulled up so you can see it, I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
Once we get there at the end. Maybe you've already caught it, but anyway. But yeah, anything else? Before we get into the dinner scene, anything else?
No. And what was for our listening audience, what was the line that Qui-Gon actually says there?
Oh, he says, I'm Qui-Gon Jinn, and this is Jar Jar Binks, I think.
And this is Jar Jar Binks.
I'm pretty sure that's what he says. That's what I can double check here. I'm pretty sure that's what the illustrated screenplay says. But
yeah. For those of you who are listening, Josiah texted me that like right after last week's because it was really eating at him. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was driving me nuts.
And I'm thankful because I always thought you said, "And I'm a Jedi," but I was glad that Josiah cleared this up.
Yeah. So the original dialogue in the script is, "These are my friends, Mom. This is Padmé, and gee, I don't know any of your names." And Qui-Gon says, I'm Qui-Gon Jinn, and this is Jar Jar Binks. And which is why he kind of looks over there. He looks in Jar Jar's direction and gestures at him. And so it's a little hard to tell what he's saying because his head's turned and he's got all that facial hair kind of obscuring it. But pretty sure that's what he says.
Okay.
And then Padmé says her line. But yeah. So anyway.
Gotcha. Cool.
That's that scene.
Yeah, I don't remember the other questions I asked last time, but that's okay. If you ever find the answer to them, you can pass them on to us. So
yeah, absolutely.
Nice. All right, so dinner time with the Skywalkers.
Yep.
All right, man. Why don't you start us off? What are some some pointers here that we're all missing. That's been in front of our face for what is it, 20 years or something?
Oh, let me unleash my wisdom.
That's right.
No. One thing I caught recently that I thought was interesting was when they talk about the slaves having transmitters in their body. So Anakin has a transmitter in his body. So when we meet Anakin, he's already less than human. He already has a mechanical part to him. So he lives a subhuman life as a slave already, but this was represented physically in him as well, that he has a mechanical part of him that makes him a slave, that defines him as being a slave, and it will destroy him if he tries to escape it. And so he tries to build a scanner to locate the transmitter. So he's trying to gain the power to remove the part of him that's a slave. And so this is something that this is kind of this little microcosm of his life as Vader too. And it only gets worse from here, that it takes over his whole body. And so the only time we really see Anakin free of this mechanical enslavement is when his consciousness is preserved in the Force at the end of Return of the Jedi. So it's something he has to deal with his whole life. He's always slightly there's always a mechanical part to him. There's always a darkness in him. There's always an inhumanness that he has to deal with until he's released from that at the very end of the story.
Wow, that's super deep, man. That's awesome. Is that from yours? Like, did you read that somewhere, or is that something you just kind of came up with?
I just, to me, George was very clear about the mechanical part of him is he's losing his humanity. Yeah. And I just thought it was, and that was a representation. That's a symbol of him being, being a slave, even as Vader, right? He's slave to the Emperor at that point. And he's slave to his own. He's created this whole situation for himself. Unfortunately, he was a slave who never wanted to be a slave. He was freed, and he was living life well. He was, riding high as one of the best Jedi ever, and then he ruined it for himself. And so he kind of created his own hell. And so just that image, of the mechanical piece of you eating away your humanity, I thought, well, it's interesting. There's no secret, or there's no mistake that part is in this little scene here. That idea of this transmitter that's defines a slave is that they will, you are property. If you have this inside of you, you can't run away, otherwise we'll blow you up, right? It's it's the restraining bolt that R2-D2 has in Episode 4, right? It's your property. You're subhuman, and Anakin's trying to find a scanner. He was trying to create a scanner to locate his inhuman piece. He wants to figure out what that is and get rid of it. He's always trying to, throughout all these scenes, doesn't accept that he's a slave. He's always doing anything he can to kind of find freedom here or there. So George doesn't say that it doesn't say that explicitly, but looking at why that dialogue is in this scene, why he brought that up, to me it seems consistent with the arc that Anakin has of this mechanical part of him that is represents his part of him that is inhuman or is unnatural, that is taking over slowly as his life goes on.
Oh, wow. Yep, there's mind blown number one. That's awesome, man.
Okay. Wow. Well, again, George didn't say that outright, but to me it's like that. He said that about other parts about him later on. To me it seems like it's the first step in that direction. And so mostly my point is about him, losing his arm and then losing his legs and all that. But I feel like you see just a tiny whisper of that, tiny hint of that here at the beginning. From day one with Anakin, there's darkness in him.
Wow, that's so cool, man. And it's so true. I think I'm trying to look for the quote, but there's a line I'm pretty sure he mentioned in this archive book this morning that, Anakin has always had this kind of sense of control, like wanting to be in control. Am I wrong on that? Maybe I'll see if I can find the quote, but that would make sense, right? He won't accept reality. He's always trying to change it, which seems like a very Skywalker thing. Always kind of looking to the future. Yeah, how can I change things? Goodness, I'll see if I can find that quote, but I thought I just read it this morning. How Anakin, he's just always trying to, gain control. And that makes a lot of sense with what you're saying, though, about the idea of like, no, I'm not going to accept this. It's that rebel spirit. I'm going to get over this. I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to accept that I'm a slave. I'm not going to accept that I'm bound to a farm on Tatooine. I'm not going to, do this the way everyone wants me to. I'm going to take control of this. Which is kind of the definition of slavery, really, just being enslaved to yourself. But,
yeah.
Wow. That's so cool. Yeah. And it's interesting because I remember reading in this book too that George said, anytime something big happens in the Skywalker family, particularly with Anakin, there's sort of a death that takes place, and then something else is born. And he really refers to that with episode 2 in particular, when his mom dies, which we'll come to, how that's kind of the first time we see Vader born. But there's seeds of it, like you've been saying here. And like you said in episode 1, or like you said about episode 1 a few weeks ago, was that this episode kind of seems like Anakin's on the teeter-totter, like which way is he going to go? He's got these potentials to be super helping, super loving, or super controlling, super angry, It's the duel of fates, right? It seems like kind of episode 1, that'd be a theme. Which way is he going to go? Which way is he going to go?
Yeah, he's this big ball of potential. He's this big ball of potential right now, and so he can be used. Yeah, which direction is it going to go? Yeah, it can be. It's nature versus nurture, and in this case, it's the nurture. Like what is going to be is the is the dark side going to be nurturing him right now? We know it will eventually, but who's going to be the dominant power in his life right now? And ends up being the Jedi, thankfully. Which ends up saving him later on. But those seeds are planted, and of course Sidious picks up on that at the end of the movie. He sees these seeds and he goes, "Okay, I'm going to water those in the next movie." And that's where we see, Anakin actually go to the dark side for the first time in Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
And I remember reading George talking about, like, if you could boil down Star Wars, all 6 films, into a sentence, he said it's basically like, how can a good boy become evil? How can, like, a good kid become Darth Vader? And then he said also, how could a republic turn into an empire? He said those are like what you boil it down to. And I thought, wow. And yeah, it's that same deal. Yeah. It's that whole potential. Like, everyone's got potential to do good or to do evil. And who's going to foster it? What fruit or what tree are you going to water? What dog are you going to feed? The philosophical argument. Are you going to feed the evil dog, or are you going to feed the good dog? Yeah. I still can't find that quote, but anyway, I'll keep looking. But that's really cool, man. And to see that tiny little seed right there, it just is something as simple as a little bit of machine in him already. Yeah. And we'll get to that point.
Because we'll see that in his attitude. We'll see that in his attitude. We'll see that in his dialogue, and then there's just added to that every time Anakin loses more of his humanity. That's represented physically, and so it would make sense that there already is this kind of piece of him that's, that's tied to his, that's holding him back. It's a piece of his slavery that's represented physically, So I remember picking that up on that. I thought that was pretty cool. That piece is already there from the beginning. But let's see.
So here's kind of the quote. It's not quite what I was thinking, but I'll just read this. This is George. It says, the core of Anakin's problem is that Jedi are raised from birth so that my book just closed. So there we go. Okay. So that they let go of everything. They're trained more than anything else to understand the transitional nature of life, that things are constantly changing and you can't hold on to anything. You can love things, but you can't be attached to them. You must be willing to let the flow of life and the flow of the Force move through your life, move through you, so that you can be compassionate and loving and caring, but not be possessive and grabbing and holding on to the things and trying to keep things the way they are. Letting go is a central theme of the film. And this is particularly in episode 1. So I just think that kind of captures some of the things we're talking about here, is Anakin's desire. Like, he struggles with this, and we'll see him struggle with it in basically every aspect, every movie, every Clone Wars episode. He's got to be in control. He's got to hold on. He's got things to be his way. He's missing out on that central theme and just having a hard time letting go, which is right here.
Yeah, and if you can't let go of something, it controls you, and you're a slave to it. In a weird way, it's an unhealthy relationship. If it's something you're holding on to so tightly that you can't live without, then it's you're beholden to it. And Yeah, and so that's something he needs to, that he eventually will learn the hard way. That's true. Yeah, I love how we just see things very early on. Just little hints here and there. They're not really, we don't really know until the whole picture is completed that we can see that stuff so early.
Yeah, because man, I never really thought about that. Never, ever, ever. And I've seen this movie. I mean, I'm probably a million times, and I've never thought about that. And it's just right there. I just think that's so cool. That little foreshadow, And then we see also here Padmé's aloofness, as George calls it. She's just so shocked. Like, slavery exists out here? But what about the Republic anti-slavery laws? And Shmi, Anakin's mom, is like, it doesn't exist out here. And just again, she's totally ignorant. Yeah. So you totally rock my world in knowing that she's ignorant and aloof of everything. Like, wow.
Well, so she can't believe. Yeah, she can't believe that a world like Tatooine could exist, right? Slavery, corruption, lawlessness, all that. Initially she was curious, right, to explore this world that seemed so different from hers. But now that she's there, she doesn't really like what she sees. She's been living in, as we talked about, like a literal dream world, a paradise. And so once you leave that, she's been kicked out of the garden, and now you see a bunch of corruption and sadness and death, and a bunch of unsavory characters walking around the streets. The rough town, that the rough, bad part of town. That's what Tatooine is, and she sees that, and so she has to find a way now to cope with all that. Reality is real. It's the loss of innocence that happens in the hero's journey. It's when you're not you're not in Kansas anymore. You leave the farm, now you're in the real world, and it's tough. It's Luke at the bar when he gets shoved. It's he's never been out. It seems like he's acting like he's never been out off the farm before. You see that all the time. To take a weird example, like Tangled, like in that movie, Rapunzel, she's been stuck up in a tower her whole life, and she sees the real world, and there's danger, and there's people who are trying to manipulate her and all this stuff. So it's it's a loss of innocence that happens in the hero's journey, and this movie is Padmé's hero's journey. Like Anakin starts his, but his obviously takes multiple movies to be completed, but Padmé's hero's journey really kind of takes place in this film. We see her go from naive, ignorant, unable to do what's right, unwilling to do what's right, and she's taken on this journey, and she learns a lot actually in this scene itself. I love this scene, and this is a big part of it. This line here where she's like, she's trying to rationalize it, and the Republic anti-slavery laws, and Shmi's response: the Republic doesn't exist out here. We must survive on our own. There's a reason we see Shmi say this to Padmé, because that's Padmé's lesson that she has to learn. The Republic won't help you. You need to figure it out for yourself. You need to survive on your own. Wow. So she goes to the Republic. Even after this, she doesn't quite get it. She goes to the Senate. She goes to Coruscant, and there's no help. And so she realizes, I need to do what I learned on Tatooine. I need to do what Shmi, Qui-Gon, Anakin, all those guys have been teaching me. I need to take responsibility for this myself, go back to the planet and figure it out myself, because no one's coming to help me right now.
Wow.
And of course, the way to do that is to extend the olive branch to the Gungans. And so it's not just all by yourself. It's actually you're working together with someone else who you thought there was a distance between, but you built that bridge.
Boy, and talk about humility, right? Again, that's been a big theme in this movie, is humility, her humbling herself to, not only come out of the ivory tower, and I was thinking about that, the princess comes out of the tower, Jasmine, Tangled, Rapunzel, all that.
Yeah, totally.
And then asking for help. That's cool. That's a huge journey. I never, dude, there's mind blow number 2. I love it. I love it. I never would have thought about that. Like, this is Padmé's lesson. I mean, you already blew my mind. I think it was the first episode that we had this, where you were like, no, this is kind of Padmé's movie. Oh my goodness, I never even thought about that, and so good. I love it. And these themes are so rich, and they just resonate with us. I love it. And I love seeing the foreshadow here and the intentionality. That's beautiful, man. And a simple dinner scene,
I love the, So I love the mirror that we have of episode 4, because it's the same thing, where that's Leia's story, the plot, what's happening, the problem is her. Even though Leia doesn't quite go on her hero's journey in that, her journey happens more in Empire Strikes Back. But she's more fully formed as an individual in New Hope than Padmé is here. But we've talked about that before, where it's the plot, the problem that all the characters have to solve is the problem. It's the plight of the heroine, of Padme and of Leia. The main character is Luke and Anakin, the farm boy, the young, idealistic, naive, or not naive, but yeah, a young idealistic boy. And then the perspective that we see all this happen is of these. There's always these pairs. There's Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in this one, the Jedi, and then R2 and 3PO in A New Hope. So, so it's just a fun little. We start off the trilogies in that kind of same way, the kind of dividing up the story and its elements and seeing them from these different characters' perspectives. So, yeah, it's fun.
I really like that. I'm gonna.
George knew what he was doing.
He did know what he was doing. It's so cool. I want to see if I can find this quote. I read this morning too. He was talking about Jake Lloyd in particular, the actor who plays Anakin. He said this. He said Jake Lloyd was a natural. He reminded me of a young Luke Skywalker, and that was good because he had to embody the same presence that Luke had in the first film. Jake was somebody you liked a lot, who was a lot of fun and very alive. And I just thought it was cool. Again, George is really is really known for saying this, how poetry, they rhyme, and how he created his movies that way, which is what you're saying, like they rhyme. Episode 1 rhymes with episode 4. It's not a remake of it, but it's a rhythm, and I just think that's really cool. And just thinking about that with Anakin, how he rhymes with Luke, father like son, it's just a beautiful poetry. Yeah, it's fun to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and with Padme and Leia too. Then you really see the family dynamics here. We've talked about that, but it's a beautiful thing. So yeah,
totally. Okay,
I have to ask, do you know, and I may have asked you this a time before too, but Jar Jar, this is his second, this is my 90s childhood here. It seems like his second Full House line from the old TV show, The Full House. He says, "How wooed?" And I've been wondering if George was influenced by that at all, because there's two lines there, "Squeeze me" and "How wooed." Those both are like lines from Ashley Kate and Mary Olsen in Full House. At least I think it was those two. But do you know anything about that? Is that an influence?
I've never seen Full House, and I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, it's a little
that's interesting. That's cool. So would that have come out before this movie? I don't remember when that show was on. I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Now I gotta look it up. What we're talking about. I was really curious because it just seems like two lines there. So I don't know. Maybe it's just total coincidence, but I was just totally curious if you knew that.
No, that's interesting. I'll have to look that up. Maybe there's a yeah. George secretly brought in the Full House writers to write the script for him. That's maybe. Funny.
Oh yeah, it would have been before, because it was 1987 to 1995. So, yeah, it would have been totally before this movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh. So
interesting.
Anyway.
No.
Yeah, but it is.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, that's all right. There's the two girls. I'm pretty sure it's the young. So if you don't know the show, there's two young girls. Well, there's one young girl. They're played by twin actors. But they both say those lines, and so it's cool. I have no idea if this is intentional or not, but they're both children. Like Jar Jar is meant to be a child-like character, right. And here or in Full House, it's the youngest girl who says those lines. It's just super innocent, like 6-year-old, I think, somewhere in there, and I don't know. It's a nice tie, if not for a 90s child. So all of you 90s kids out there.
Well, there you go.
Nice touch.
I mean, even if it's not an intentional lift from Full House, it's serving the same purpose, right? Like you said, it's an innocent, childlike character saying it, and so it makes sense that Jar Jar would say that. It just establishes more his character of who he is in the story. He's the kind of the benign fool that doesn't understand what's going on, but he's childlike, very, very immature, but is also there to help. He's there to try and do his best, even though it's annoying to a lot of the characters. Yeah, that's cool. I have to watch Full House. I know about Mary Kate and Ashley. Also, I know that as they got older, they did a bunch of videos and series themselves. I know that their sisters. Elizabeth Olsen, Scarlet Witch in Marvel. So, so the Olsen family is quite a They're all over pop culture.
They
But
are. Yeah.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I know everyone loves Full House. I have to watch a couple episodes and see what's going on. But
Yeah. I remember loving it as a kid, but I always thought about that with these because there's two lines in here, and yeah, it does. It just
mhm.
paints the child. If nothing else, I think you're right. It does paint the childhood nature or childlike nature of Jar Jar. And as a father of young children, it is totally possible for them to do something like Jar Jar would. Instead of a long tongue, they
Mhm.
reach right in the middle of the table and just grab something.
Yeah.
Like, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon
It's
gives that
funny in the
nice dad
original
look.
script he's much more yeah, in the original script he's much more disruptive. Like he
Uh,
burps and stuff and he's always, there's a lot more of him kind of interrupting the scene in the screenplay. Where it's just totally like the kids don't care what the adults are talking about. He's just doing his own thing. He's just worried about his food.
Yes, very
But
much so.
mhm.
Yep. So, and then we get this scene where, once again, like you mentioned and blew my mind the last few times, we see Anakin's pride come out again. Has anyone
Mhm.
ever seen a pod race? Guess what I can do? Such a, I
Yep.
mean, like you said, it's a cute child thing, but a shadow to come of look what I can do. Um, but I mean, who hasn't ever been around a kid that's said something like that? Have you ever seen my
Mhm.
whatever? Have you seen my sports team? Have you seen my toy collection? Have you seen my,
Yeah,
you
look
know
what
what
I
I
did.
can
Yeah.
do? Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. It's very
Totally.
well done. Like you said, that innocent dark side portrayal here. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, he says I'm the only human who can do it. So,
Mm,
he's special and he knows it. But yeah, right, like you said, he's a kid and so it's not a problem yet, but that attitude won't go away and so when he gets older, the Sith fan the flames of that pride and it turns into a problem.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is interesting because then it circles back again. Poetry. You see that in Luke. He's not quite as obvious about it, but you
Mhm.
still see him saying like, "No, I can do this." He tells Yoda like, "I got this." I can go do it. It's that
Mhm.
independent. How it could be a flaw or a strength. A strength or a weakness.
Yeah.
And for Luke,
Or when
he'll
Han
turn into
says,
good. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, when Han says, or no, sorry, the delay is sorry killing our flow here. I keep we keep talking over each other. But when Han says, it's like when Han says, who's gonna fly it, kid? You. And he says, you bet I could. I'm not such a bad pilot myself. It's
uh,
like almost the exact same thing. Of course,
mm-hmm,
he's just older and it's a little more developed in Luke. It's a little worse in Luke at that point than it is in Anakin here. But
mm-hmm,
um, yeah, Anakin has a lot of little moments in here that are really telling. And like I like when
mm-hmm,
and he says later once he's outed Qui-Gon as a Jedi, and or Qui-Gon says, and maybe I killed a Jedi and took it from him. Anakin says,
mm-hmm,
no one can kill a Jedi, and so Anakin says he also thinks the Jedi are invincible, kind of like what the audience thinks at this point, right? Hasn't as far as everything we've seen in the movie so far has kind of told us that these Jedi are kind of the most powerful creatures we've seen, most powerful beings we've seen in the film so far. Nothing has come to match them yet. But in the end, of course, we see that the Jedi are not invincible; that you can kill a Jedi, and that's a huge lesson for Anakin, for Obi-Wan, and for the audience. But of course, that's Anakin. He says, "I always dreamed of being a Jedi." Like in his mind, a Jedi is power. It is, um, you know, freedom from death and slavery. Like that, he dreams of being a Jedi and coming back to free the slaves. Right. So he does come back eventually, but not in a literal way. He thinks here. But for Anakin to become a Jedi, that equals freedom from death and slavery. It's power, and it's kind of like we talked about earlier. That's very attractive to a young child who's also a slave, because that's the most like unpowerful being you could imagine. A kid and who's also a slave. Like they got nothing. There's nothing, no power coming from that character, right? Like I said, he's all potential right now. And he's very much like, he's a lot like Spartacus in that way. A slave who eventually escapes freedom with the goal of coming back and freeing all the other slaves, but is eventually unsuccessful in that. His Spartacus's rebellion failed, and Anakin didn't actually come back to be the freer of slaves. Initially, he became the enslaver. He became the symbol of oppression.
Wow.
Unfortunately, but
Hey, that's really cool.
yeah, but all that stems from we see originally his belief in the Jedi. That he dreams of that because a Jedi is, it's power. It's a way out of slavery. It's a way out of oppression. and it's power. And he already kind of can sense that, and already he desires that. And that's what kids want to be adults, right? They want to be, why can't I stay up late? Why can't I, do all the things that the adults do? And because they think that's powerful, but there's a big burden that comes with it as well that you don't really know about until you actually end up being an adult. Then you go, oh, well, this isn't as fun as I thought it'd be.
Wow. That's so cool to see again. Because I've always, I missed that. It always kind of struck me when you get to episode 3 and Obi-Wan says, it's right before their duel at the end, and Obi-Wan says, your lust for power did that, and I always kind of thought about that. Like, it's just interesting because Anakin, at least at first glance, especially just the movies, if you don't really know Clone Wars, that's not super obvious, or he doesn't seem like he's just hungering for power. I mean, he is. I mean, we see it, but it's not right in front of your face, like looking back, or like just listening to this, I'm like, wow, I appreciate hearing that, because looking back, you can see all these hints of it, that I didn't see before. And it's really neat to just kind of have these subtle hints. Because for me, as growing up, I was always like, Anakin's turn felt so sudden. But now going through this, it's like, no, it's been here this whole time. I mean, we can see these little seeds of the dark side planted here, and especially catered on in Clone Wars. But it's like, wow, I really appreciate hearing that. And then episode 2, we start seeing that lust for power again. Obi-Wan's holding me back. This is all his fault. I'm going to take things into my own control. It's like, wow, I didn't notice that before. Because, Anakin's in the movies, he's not like, I want to go and control the Senate. Like, that's not his goal, So for me, it was like thinking of Anakin trying to take power to be over an empire isn't really something that's at the forefront. But so I guess I'm just saying that because it's like, wow, I really appreciate seeing that it's not this quick, sudden fall. It's just been this long, slow process. And seeing, like, even right here from the beginning, like from the first 10 minutes we've known him, we're seeing that, like, wow. And it's cool to see because they're good desires.
And to your point.
So, I mean, he wants to.
Go for it. Yeah.
Who doesn't want to get out of slavery? Like, that's a good thing. But it's going to be manipulated, and it's like, well, I'm not content with just freedom. I want to control, and it goes too far. Yeah. So, so cool, man. So cool. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and to your point, like, that lust for power that Obi-Wan describes really just manifests itself in episode 3 because he's been trained out of it by that point. But like I said, those seeds are there. They're watered in episode 2, and episode 2 is very you can go either way. And so the Clone Wars, at the end of episode 2 and through the Clone Wars, he starts going on the right path. He's become the best Jedi ever. We see that throughout Clone Wars. He's just such a good person, good character. He's the best he's ever been. He still has a darkness in him, but he doesn't fall prey to that. But all that stuff is underneath the surface and waiting to be manipulated by Sidious. And so all it takes is the threat of Padmé's death to let open the floodgates and all that stuff that he had, all that stuff he hadn't been working on, all that stuff he hadn't killed, all of a sudden grew and manifested itself. And so, that lust for power does really mostly manifest itself very quickly as things escalate in episode 3. Once he gives himself over the dark side, things start happening very, very quickly. But this, like I said, the seeds of it and the foundations are built throughout the movies. So it's a good observation for sure. That's a good way to describe it because I haven't really thought about it that way of tracing that particular aspect of him, his lust for power all the way back. But it's true. It does start here, and you do see the seeds of it for sure.
Yeah. The line comes to mind from Pirates of the Caribbean with Jack Sparrow when he says, not all treasure is silver and gold, mate. I love that line.
There you go.
Because Palpatine is more the guy who's like, I want the silver and gold. Anakin is like, no, I want power to save my loved ones, and so it's interesting, and I think that's why I've not really seen this before, his lust for power, because he's not out for the silver and gold, he's not out for control of the galaxy, he wants control to have his will be done to save his loved ones. And so for me, I just haven't, like, they're different in my mind, and so I missed it. So just a little side note there. I guess I'm just throwing it out, like, wow, these seeds have been here this whole time, but he's lusting for a different power than just like, I want to rule the Senate, or I want to have all these riches. Yeah. And it sounds
initially
like he'll
it
get
is
there,
that,
but
yeah.
it definitely plays a part, yes, but yeah. So anyway, kind of cool. My mind's blown. I'm thinking out loud. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, like initially he does just want to save Padme, but then he's like, well, if I can have that power, then I can, then we can rule the galaxy, and and then he wants the silver and gold after that.
Yes,
it
then
leads
it comes
to the wrong direction. Yeah, but that order is important. That it starts out from a good place. Yeah, you're right. It's good to bring that up. Yeah. And you see that in this scene where he says, I can help, I can fix anything, when they talk about their ship being stranded. Like it starts from a place of selflessness. But this idea, like all his others, just eventually just gets twisted, and so you can see, it's like Anakin is little young boy Anakin is such a perfect mirror of Vader in the original trilogy, where just you can see just these same desires, same impulses, just coming from totally different motivations, where here it's selflessness and then selfishness later. But what's interesting here, I love Qui-Gon's response. It's like, I can help, I can fix anything. Again, it's like, okay, that's a kid just, talking big just because he's a kid. But Qui-Gon says, I believe you can. And he says it kind of with a laugh, but I think there's part of Qui-Gon in that moment where he starts to see, maybe he's being honest when he said, maybe he truly is starting to see at this point that there's something in this kid. Maybe he can fix anything. Maybe he can be the solution to our problem. And Anakin will solve the ultimate problem in the story eventually. But there's so much dialogue here is so good. Because also, what does Qui-Gon say later? He says, greed can be a powerful ally, right? Because we've seen Sidious use that with the Trade Federation, right? And so it's like Qui-Gon is aware of that potential, that he's not going to succumb to that, but it's just, you just see things spoken in dialogue here that we've already seen other characters manifest that and live that out, and we'll see in the future for the movies to come. Just little things like that. That's just a line that doesn't mean a whole lot in context, but you see that's a theme of the movie, is greed, as opposed to helping each other out, working with other people, and being generous, which of course Anakin very, very, very much is in this movie.
Yeah, and I've always liked that line, because it just shows, Qui-Gon's not ignorant like it feels like other Jedi might be. Like he's very aware of it. Yeah, he knows the tactics of the scum and villainy. Yeah. I like that. Whereas it seems like the other Jedi tend to just kind of, at this point, they seem to be just kind of hidden, ignorant. Like, no, I'm not gonna worry about those guys. I could be wrong, but it's neat. Qui-Gon's down, like we've talked about. He's down in the depths. He's getting his fingers dirty. He knows this. He knows this world. It's just pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, for sure, the Jedi have an arrogance about them in these movies, where they think, oh, that we would see the Sith coming. We're good. We got this, and all of a sudden they're taken by surprise when the Sith do show up. So there for sure is an arrogance in the Jedi in these movies, for sure. And again, Anakin, who is it? Obi-Wan says, Anakin's become arrogant. Yoda says a flaw more and more common among Jedi. So Yoda kind of throws it back at him and says, well, Obi-Wan, you're not so perfect yourself. None of us are. And so they're even kind of aware of it. So I think you're totally right. Let's see what else we got here. I just have a bunch of more things like this, and this scene just has a bunch of little pieces of gold in it, but I don't want to keep talking the entire time. So do you have anything?
No, that's great.
Okay. Well,
the question, I just had a question for you. Is there anything significant about him saying, I'm the only human that can do it? Do you know why? Is that just, is there nothing behind that? Or is that supposed to give us a clue into something about humans in the Star Wars universe versus aliens? Or what do you think about that? Or do you know anything?
I think there's a couple of different aspects to it. One thing that's definitely implied, and Qui-Gon talks about it. He says, you must have Jedi reflexes if you can race pods. Is that pod racing requires speed, response time that humans are not capable of, that it's so fast, so dangerous, as Qui-Gon says, that humans are just not designed, not built for it. And so the fact that Anakin can do it shows that he has something extra, that he's special that way. So it's just a great visual way to show that, okay, there's something extra about him, and that's his Force sensitivity, his potential in the Force. So there's that, and it also just makes him a big underdog, just dramatically for the story. When we get to the pod race, it's just when we get to the pod race, there's like so many things against him. Just there's so many things that make him the underdog in that situation. One of them is that he's human, and that he's against all these aliens that have multiple arms, and they have all these different ways of. Some of them are more aerodynamic than him. Whatever their advantage is.
Gotcha.
He's just this little human. He doesn't look like he belongs in that world where these crazy aliens belong in this crazy world. But we identify. There's a reason, like I said before, that Shmi and Anakin are the only humans we've seen really in Tatooine so far, because they're the ones we identify with. They're slaves. They're not supposed to be here. They're not. They're in a dangerous place, a place that's dangerous to them. And so you see all these weird aliens. They make sense in this weird sport called pod racing. What's a pod race? I don't know. What are pods? I don't know. This is crazy. This is weird. These aliens are weird. Weird makes sense when there's more weirdness around it. But when you put a human, and we're humans watching this, when we see something like ourselves in this environment, we just instinctively go, oh, wow, this is strange. I wouldn't be comfortable here. What's going on? And that makes Anakin's success and his willingness to put himself into that craziness and wildness and danger that much more impactful, and that much more like, oh, admirable, and wow, this kid's really, he puts his life on the line for people he met that day, for virtual strangers. Yeah, so I think those are the biggest pieces of that fact of him being a human in the pod race. That's what comes to mind for me, at least, from what I've studied. But
gotcha. Okay, I was just curious. I always thought that was kind of an odd line. I'm really human that can do it. Yeah, not bad. I just thought, that's kind of weird. I wonder what is the intention behind that. But yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so hit me up with your thoughts on this scene, man.
Well, yeah, it's just the dialogue here. Just there's just a bunch of cool things here. So
yeah.
And it just keeps hammering the home. I won't touch on this one very long because we've kind of already talked about it. But he says, "I built a racer. It's the fastest ever." Again, he's kind of being overconfident here. But it's just, again, that little piece of that. Right now, it's endearing. Right now, it's, oh, he's a cute little kid. He's, oh, I built it. It's the fastest ever. He's all proud of it. But again, he overestimates his abilities. But the next line that I really like is when Anakin says to his mom, "The biggest problem in this universe is nobody helps each other." And so that's a large theme of this movie, right? That's the problem with the Gungans and the Naboo. They don't help each other. And of course, Padmé learns from Shmi's advice before where she says, the Republic doesn't exist out here. We must survive on our own. And then how do they survive? Well, we help by helping each other out. You need to help each other because we don't have a government that's going to do it. We don't have a system in place that's going to help. And so just that, the theme of the movie is basically, one of the themes of the movie is just stated in that line there, which I really like. And of course, Padmé learns from that. But
so cool.
At this point, she still hasn't learned because she says, it's like, I'm sure Qui-Gon doesn't want to put your son in danger. We'll find some other way. So Padmé doesn't want to, she's basically, that's exactly how she's approaching the situation on Naboo. Padmé doesn't want to put her people in danger, and she's trying to find some other way, other than violence to help her people. But through Shmi's response here, and Qui-Gon recruiting Anakin and Jar Jar and these unassuming allies, she eventually sees the potential of making these unlikely allies to help fight the battle, and which is necessary to fight. And so Shmi eventually says, you know what, I may not like it, but he can help you. And so Padmé goes, well, I may not like it, but I may be a pacifist at my heart, but at this point I have to fight. I got no other choice. And so and also just that's a good lesson for Anakin too, when she says, I may not like it, but it's her way of letting go. It's Anakin's mom showing him how to let go. And so, the Jedi may have worried about him being too old and being raised with the influence of his mom, and that he might be too attached to her, but she actually taught him really well how to let go. many times. It's just that he just eventually forgot those lessons, and through Palpatine's influence, Palpatine or Sidious helped him forget that really good influence that the Jedi and his originally his mom had on him. But yeah.
Oh man, that's cool. And you see that culminate when she sends him off. Wow, I didn't even thought about that. Yeah, how she tells him like, "Don't look back. This is it. Let go." Yeah.
She literally says to him, "It's time for you to let go." Right? Yeah.
Wow, I never picked up on that. What a theme! Yeah. Wow.
I know, it's just so cool how he weaves these things in there.
Man,
and the last thing I have
brilliant.
on this scene, and then we can I'll stop talking for a bit. We can discuss. The last note I have is like in this scene you can see Qui-Gon. There's a nice close up of Qui-Gon just looking at Anakin, kind of just contemplating, what's going on here. And he recognizes Anakin's in the next scenes to follow. He recognizes Anakin's Force ability, and you can see him kind of see it. It starts here, where you can see Anakin's kind of perception skills at the table, and learning that he can react quickly enough to successfully pod race. That's a clue. He's like, okay, you can see things before they happen and react to them without any training in the Force at all. He can already do that as a kid. Okay, there's something special about this kid. And he recognized that Anakin uses his powers to help others. Anakin's nothing but generous throughout this entire movie. And so Qui-Gon goes, okay, this is a good candidate for the Chosen One, and it's a good candidate for a Jedi in general, but he not only is a solution to our problem, I think he's even more important in that he can be the Chosen One and help the galaxy ultimately. And so he sees that. I just like, you can kind of see that here, because I remember being confused where it goes to that scene where Qui-Gon says, when he's talking to Shmi while Anakin's working on the pod racer, he goes, he's like, he has special powers. Like, he can see things before they happen. That's why he appears to have such quick reflexes. And I go, like, how do you see that? I'm like, well, he knows about the pod racing. The fact that Anakin's pod raced before is proof that he has quick reflexes, and that Anakin picked up on, Anakin kind of knew that Qui-Gon was going to free him before Qui-Gon did. Because Anakin's like, are you here to free us? He's like, no, afraid not. He's like, I think you have. And he's wrong in saying that they came there to free him, but he's not wrong in saying that he kind of manifests that. He says it and it'll happen later on. So Qui-Gon's going, well, this kid's kind of actually ahead of the ball, and he may not know it, but I can see that. And so I just like that throughout the scene, Qui-Gon it's in this scene that Qui-Gon kind of becomes fascinated with Anakin. He gives him a look or two early on where he's like, thanks, my young friend, when he helps Jar Jar. But here it's really the hook. The hook is sinking in to Qui-Gon. And Anakin's got him hooked now. He's like, okay, I gotta figure out what's going on with this kid. Anyway, just that's more of like an overall theme of the scene. But
so good. Yeah, I noticed that too. How especially when that line where Anakin says, "I think you have," and then he calls him out as a Jedi. You're a Jedi Knight, aren't you? Those two lines, you really see Qui-Gon look at him like, huh, okay. Then it seems like those moments, like, there's something here. Yeah. And he's already been kind of groomed to not, what do you want to say? Oh goodness. He doesn't want to look down upon the young ones anymore. You know what I mean? Like, he's gone through Jar Jar. He's gone through a little bit of Obi-Wan. He's gone through a little bit of Padmé. He's getting to the point now, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't underestimate these. Like, nobody's these outcasts. Seems like he's a little quicker here now versus like how he was with the others. But yeah. Very cool, man. I like it. Wow. Who knew that in just such a small scene like that, it'd just be so packed. Man, just a nice dinner scene.
So much good stuff in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last thing, I guess, since we brought it up, there's an edit. Since you have the movie in front of you, you can see this. So when Shmi says he can help you, he was meant to help you, which is also an interesting thing that she says. He was meant to help you, which is kind of foreshadowing as to she knows he's special, and we'll find out why later in their conversation with Qui-Gon. But originally, Anakin had in the screenplay, he has a line after that where he says, "Is that a yes? That is a yes." And then he looks to. I think he looks at Qui-Gon, or he looks up from his mom and he looks to Qui-Gon. So in that scene, they do a morph from his lifting his head up and to him turning his head. There's it's kind of subtle, but you can see the frame morph from one angle, from one Anakin face to another. And I think my suspicion is that they're covering up that line he says there because they wanted his reaction but not the line, just to make the scene a little more like have the kind of quiet musical ending for that scene. But I don't know if you can see it there in front of you. You can kind of see his face morph in that when he turns to look at Qui-Gon.
Wow, no, I missed it.
That's one of those little digital edits, digital manipulations that Lucas has done for almost every scene. He's never done. You can always change the scene later digitally and move characters around, have them say different things. That's just the power of digital editing that he pioneered, which I'm very grateful for as a video editor.
Yeah, seriously, he's done a lot. Oh man, he's done a lot. Yeah, I read this morning in that archive book how I think Rick McCallum, the producer, was saying like, yeah, George just demanded us the impossible, basically. I said like most, what was it? Most people do like 200 scenes or 200. I don't know if it's digital edits or something like that. But he said George had him doing like 1,700.
Yeah, at the time, the number of visual effect shots that was required of them was just astronomical compared to what was normal at the time. Like the closest equivalent was Jurassic Park at that point, which had been when they started production on Phantom Menace. It would have been like 2 years earlier is when Jurassic Park came out, and that film maybe had like maybe 24 CGI shots in them with CGI characters.
Yeah, CGI,
and then but the demand in Phantom Menace was just so much greater. Like the entire battle between droids and Gungans, like that entire sequence is all digital. That was a big ask in 1999 or 1995, or 7 when they started working on this. So, and that of course paved the way for Lord of the Rings, right? And all those great battle scenes from those movies, and that was really the beginning of it. Was Phantom Menace, and then Lord of the Rings. Seeing things on that scale was only possible with digital technology, and that was crazy to see at the time. And it was, I'm sure, stressful. I'm sure it's so stressful to be the visual effects, be John Knoll and all those guys.
Yeah, Rick McCallum says here, the thing that I was most afraid of was not can ILM do it, but could any FX house do it? Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he said the monster film like Titanic had 450 to 500 special effects shots, but George was thinking about somewhere between 1,700 and 2,000.
That's true. It's not just CGI. Yeah, it's true. Like any kind of shot that had a visual effect in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the number even goes even higher. And I think in the commentary, I don't know if this is true or to what degree they're qualifying this, but I think Rick McCallum says there's only one shot in the movie that didn't have a visual effect in it, some kind of edit or change or visual. And it's the shot of the gas coming out of the vents To Kill the Jedi on the Trade Federation ship. I think that's the only shot, according to him, that's the only shot in the movie that doesn't have some sort of manipulation to it, which seems like extreme. Like, really? That's the only one? But we'll see. I mean, he's a producer, so he would know. So I don't know why I doubt that. Just, I guess to me, I just don't want to believe that as someone like who has to edit things. Like, oh, that'd be so hard to do. However many thousands of shots in that movie, except for that one.
Man.
But
except
anyway.
for one. Yeah, pretty cool. Pioneer George, man, he's great. Wow. Well, that's amazing. Let's see. Let's go through one more scene here, and then I'm gonna have to jet a little bit earlier today.
Very good.
I like the scene. Yeah. We see a little bit of that stubbornness in Padme in this next scene. Well, I don't approve. Yeah. I think it's great that.
And you can see Qui-Gon. Go ahead.
No, I think you're about to point out what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
No. You go for it. I've been talking too much.
No, man. I just like how Qui-Gon gives her that look. Just like that knowing look of, yeah. I know the Queen doesn't approve, but you're just gonna have to trust me. And that's
he plays with her so much because he knows she's the Queen, but he's just like, well, the Queen will need to know. And that's where she's like, well, she's like, I can't do anything about this without giving my identity away. But again, that's also part of her arc, right? Is like getting rid of that mask, getting rid of that thing she's hiding behind, and taking responsibility. So at this point, she's still like using the Queen as kind of a cover to kind of hide, and it's limiting her and what she can do. And so it's only as becoming fully Padme and fully Amidala that she can be fully the Queen and fully the the nice handmaiden girl that we didn't realize was the queen. Once we put those together, then she's, fully capable as a character. But yeah, when she says, "Are you sure about this?" They the disagreement between Qui-Gon and Padmé, whether they should trust Anakin. Anakin proves her wrong by the next film. She's like, she proves him. He proves her wrong, and by the next film, is what I meant to say. By the next film, she becomes the one in his corner, like Qui-Gon is here. She's the one supporting him in the next film, believing in him when no one else does. Yeah,
that's cool.
And then that the game of chance is mentioned, right? When he talks to Watto here, he's like, I won a pod in the game of chance, and that's the game that Qui-Gon's going to cheat at later when he's using the Force on the dice, the chance cube. But it's really not cheating. It's not really cheating because, as Qui-Gon says, nothing happens by accident, right? Or later when Obi-Wan Kenobi says, there's no such thing as luck, right? So everything's kind of, the Force is willing things to be, to happen a certain way anyway. So we can maybe cover his butt there and say he's not actually cheating. But
there you go. Yeah. And to go back just one step, I do think it is pretty neat. I feel like that scene, I could be wrong, but I feel like that scene, we get a little hint of the true Padmé there. She's not doing the regal thing. She's not, it feels like the mask has slipped off a little bit. Where she does try to hide it a little bit behind the queen, but she's like, well, I don't approve. That seems really genuine. It doesn't seem like, well, the queen would not approve. You know what I mean? It's like, she's starting to venture out there a little bit. Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I never thought about that, but she's in this environment now where she's far away from any kind of royal duty. She's not even really much of a handmaid right now because she's nowhere near the queen. So she can kind of just be herself or act however, like you said, she's very genuine. She can act very real in the situation. There's no decorum about her. That's a good point.
It seems
really kind of voicing her feelings and emotions there. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. It's kind of fun. So what are your thoughts on here on this? This seems like just kind of setting up the pod race, but is there anything big here we need to kind of pick up on with Watto and Qui-Gon?
Well, to me,
and Anakin?
I like this. Yeah, I like how in this scene, we kind of understand Padmé's thinking here because Qui-Gon does gamble everything on Anakin. If Anakin loses the pod race, if he gets second in the pod race, Naboo dies. Naboo gets taken over. That's the stakes here. That's how much. That's what's really what it means, because that means that the Senate still doesn't know what's going on in Naboo. There's no communication, so no one knows that there's a problem in Naboo. The only people that know that are people on Naboo, and this our band of misfits here on Tatooine, and so it's so important that they get to Coruscant, and so it was kind of that situation where it's like. It doesn't seem like the Trade Federation would make such a bold move to invade. They're causing trouble. They just want money, but they're actually killing people. They're actually starving these people. They're actually invading this planet. The Senate wouldn't really, they don't believe it. When she brings it up, they don't think it's happening. And so the fact that that's happening in the background and all this is riding on, it's a big deal. That's what I'm saying. It's almost like genocide. Could happen if Anakin loses the pod race. And so, of course, it's good that he doesn't know that pressure is on him, but Qui-Gon kind of knows this. And so the fact that he's putting that much faith in this boy is crazy. And I also think it's funny that he claims that the pod is, and Qui-Gon says, I've acquired a pod in the game of chance. It's the fastest ever built. And he looks to Anakin because Anakin says, he said earlier, it's the fastest ever. So it's him kind of backing Anakin up, and Anakin gives him a little smile. So it's kind of this establishment of Anakin and Qui-Gon's relationship there, where Anakin goes, "Oh, he appreciates me. He gets it. He's a good friend. I'm glad I let them stay at my house during the storm," kind of thing. I just like that little. It's a small moment of their relationship being built there, and I like that.
That is cool. I was just going to mention. I was just going to mention this, but you totally changed my perspective on it. I was going to say it's so interesting how Qui-Gon will do all these unconventional things. Like I was going to say, he almost he lies here to Watto, and I thought that's so interesting for a Jedi to see lying, but he's not, according to what you just said there. It's from a certain point of view, right? It's that whole what Obi-Wan says.
Yeah.
He did acquire a pod in the game of chance. I mean, it wasn't necessarily like the actual game of chance.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But
ooh, I never thought about that.
He was there by chance, quote unquote. Wasn't expected.
Yeah.
And he got this pod through Anakin. Fastest ever built. So there you go. I was totally going to say, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, how he just lies about it. But he totally didn't. He just told the truth.
Well,
from a certain
it's funny.
point
Yeah,
of
he
view.
told the truth, but it turns out Anakin lied. Didn't mean to, because he turns out that pod has never actually run. And so they don't know if it's the fastest ever built. It's never had a test drive at all. So Anakin was kind of talking big without anything to back it up back then. But yeah, it's true. So that's actually a lie, but Qui-Gon doesn't know at this point. But yeah, that's true. That's funny. That's a good way to think about it, that he did win in a game of chance. And yeah, it was chance. Yeah, the problem there. But then again, of course, nothing happens by accident. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that's so
and
funny.
then I just love how it ends with Watto saying, "Your friend is a foolish one." Right, your friend. I think he said, "Your friend is a foolish one." Methinks that's what I have written down here. He said, and as an audience, we think so too. Like we don't know yet. Again, if we're following the story from beginning to end, we don't know yet why Qui-Gon is so confident in Anakin. So this, as an audience member, if you don't know anything about Star Wars, you're watching this, you're going, why is really why is this kid so special? Why are we laying the fate of Naboo, fate of a whole planet, on this kid's street racing abilities, like with his beat up car? It's so. Sounds so crazy to us, but eventually, in the next scene or the next couple scenes, we'll find out.
Yeah, and then the very next scene, Obi-Wan voices the opinion of the crowd. What if this plan fails, Master? It's gonna be a long time. Yeah. Do you realize how stupid this is?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're in a place, we got no money. No one's gonna give us a free ride to Naboo. That's the other side of the galaxy. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, we could be really stuck here. Yeah. Again, it's perfect setting up the stakes and creating drama, right? Nothing. Tatooine could feel like just a little side journey, but everything's connected. Everything is riding on this, and what happens here is important. It's not just a little pit stop along the road.
Yeah, that's so neat. Oh, I want to keep going, but I really need to go. No,
you're good.
My wife has to leave, and I have to go watch the kids, because this scene is a really big one with
it's important.
and Qui-Gon, and then seeing the pod race, and then the deleted scene. Oh my goodness, I just can't wait to hear all your thoughts on this. But unfortunately, I'll have to wait. So, I still enjoyed it. There's always so much to digest after these conversations. It's like, wow, there's so many cool thoughts. So I am grateful, man. I'm grateful we get to do this podcast.
Thanks, me too, man. You always bring up great perspectives. And I always go, oh yeah, like just a little thing of like, a game of chance. I'm like, whoa, there's a play on words there. I totally never would have saw. Never would have seen unless you hadn't brought it up. So thank you for stuff like that, man. I enjoy it.
Hey man, it just comes off what you say. I mean, I was gonna talk about how Qui-Gon's a liar, but you just changed my entire perspective right there. So it's great. And it's just, and I appreciate this. And I read this in this. I'll say this, and then we should probably end. But I read that in that archive book this morning, how in casting Qui-Gon, they were looking for an Obi-Wan of Episode 4. That kind of same solid, wise, mature Jedi, and how that's part of the reason why they went with Liam Neeson is he just embodies that. But I thought that was cool, and just thinking about that, with him from a certain point of view, and just seeing how he rubs off later on Obi-Wan as he matures and goes into the Force too. It's just pretty neat. So I don't know how intentional.
Yeah, it's true.
George
I never really thought about
that. So good.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but it's true. Like Obi-Wan turns into Qui-Gon by Episode 4. Like he really embodies his master really well in that movie. Yeah, I never thought about that. That's such a good point. See, you're so smart.
Hey man, I just read it in the book.
Never really thought of that.
But it's cool.
That's right. George, I didn't reveal anything. This is all stuff that George, you and I are just discovering things that George already thought of. So
yeah, he's the real genius here. We're just trying to dig up the gold he already laid out.
Yeah, totally. That's it for this episode. Next, we're going to talk about the mystery surrounding Anakin's birth, and we ask the question, do the Jedi actually kidnap children to train them? And we also ask the question, can anyone use the Force? So that's the next one. Listen to it, or don't. Either way, thanks for listening to this one.